Over 100 college coaches were asked who would be the next head coach to win his first national championship, and not a single one of them mentioned Mark Few. Now that is some bulletin board material.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Andy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Well, folks, we have a date set for a 4-star recruit, top 40 prospect in the 2026 class, one of the best offensive players in high school hoops. He is coming to campus later this month. We're going to talk about that and some more recruiting updates, including how Sam Funch's visit went for Craziness in the Kennel. Plus, we're going to talk about the best French Zags of all time, 5 great players from the country of France who have played for Gonzaga. We're going to rank them to close out the show. But first, we're leading off today's show with another update from the phenomenal Candid Coaches series, which comes out every single year, written and produced by Matt Norlander and Gary Parrish of CBS Sports. They also host the Eye on College Basketball podcast. And what this is a series of questions that the two of them ask over 100 different Division I coaches. Some of them are head coaches, some of them are assistant coaches, they're mid-major, high major, low major coaches, kind of to try to get a variety of different input for all these different questions and a variety of different responses. And it's a handful of different questions. Who's going to be the best team in college basketball, so on and so forth. And each year there's different questions kind of based on the landscape of college basketball. The most recent question that came out was a simple one. Question: which coach will be the next first-time national champion? So which coach in college basketball will be the first one or will win their first national championship next? Currently, there are only 7 active head coaches who have won a national championship. That means that there are 350 plus programs that if they were to win a national championship this year, it would be their head coaches first. Those 7 coaches are John Calipari, Scott Drew, Todd Golden, Danny Hurley, Tom Izzo, Rick Pitino, and Bill Self. Now, there are also a handful of coaches who have 700 or more career wins, who are active coaches who have yet to actually win the big one, who have not won that national championship. Mark Few is, of course, on that list, as well as Kelvin Sampson, Rick Barnes over at Tennessee, Sampson, of course, at Houston, Dana Altman for the University of Oregon. Those are the only ones. Now that Bruce Pearl has retired, he was on that list, but retired, of course, a few weeks ago in early September instead of staying with Auburn. So that's the list of coaches that are kind of the generally considered the best coaches who have yet to win a national championship. Some of those coaches were on the list here, but the results, I don't think were ultimately all that surprising other than Mark Few's lack of inclusion in this list. Here are your top 4 vote getters by percentage. Kelvin Sampson for Houston at number 1 with 38% of the vote. Matt Painter at Purdue next up with 26% of the vote. John Shire at Duke next up at 16% of the vote. And then Mark Pope at Kentucky was at 6% of the vote. There were 4 other coaches who received votes in that category, but did not reach that 5% threshold. That would be Nate Oates at Alabama, Tommy Lloyd, our good friend at Arizona, Dusty May at Michigan, and then Grant McCasland, the head coach at Texas Tech. So notably, on this list, Mark Few did not get mentioned. And when I was reading through the article, that was the first thing, of course, that stood out to me. I was like, where is Mark Few? And I thought, I wonder if Gary or Matt is going to acknowledge that in the article. And they did. This particular article was written by Gary Parrish, and he mentioned being surprised that Mark Few's name was not on the list. I'm just going to quote directly from the article here. And this is the first and important caveat, as he says, quote, many coaches I spoke with about this question primarily viewed it through the prism of this upcoming season, which makes sense. And he went on to say, if you don't think that one of the 7 coaches who has already won a championship is going to win one this year, basically, if you don't think it's going to be Arkansas, Florida, UConn, Michigan State, St. John's, or Kansas, then you would think that it's going to be a new head coach. Therefore, you're going to pick whoever you think is most likely to do it. Now, if you were to take a list of programs that are likely to win a championship, most of those programs would be on the list. Arkansas, going to be very good this year, top 20 team. Florida's a top 5 team for the most part. I've skipped Baylor and Scott Drew, but they are a borderline top 25 team. Of course, UConn top 5 team, St. John's top 5 team by most accounts. Michigan State and Kansas are going to be in that mix for the top 25 as well. But if you think that it's going to be Purdue or Houston, of course, you're going to pick either Kelvin Sampson or Matt Painter. And frankly, the majority of coaches, the majority of fans, the majority of analysts who follow the sport on a regular basis have their preseason pick to either be Houston or Purdue. That includes yours truly. I have Houston as my number 1 team in the country with Purdue right behind them at number 2. And I think they are interchangeable at the very top of this list. So I don't really have an issue. If you truly believe one of those coaches is going to take home a natty this year, obviously they're going to be the next first-time head coach to win a championship. So I don't think that that's a particularly surprising result. If I had been asked this question, I would have picked one of those 2 coaches before I would have picked Mark Few. I think that that is a reasonable take. But it's surprising that there was not a single mention of Mark Few among the 100-plus coaches that were asked this question. I'll continue to quote Gary Parrish in this article. He said, quote, "That said, a semi-surprise on the overall voting return, not a single mention for Mark Few. If we'd run this poll 3 years ago, I'd be willing to wager Gonzaga's coach would have easily been in the top 5. This suggests that Few's compatriots think his window has passed." A couple of things. Not exactly bold to say that 3 years ago, Mark Few would have been in the top 5. There's a pretty good chance he would have been number 1 3 or 4 years ago, coming off of that national championship run in 2021 when he lost to Scott Drew and the Baylor Bears. At that time, Gonzaga was recruiting at an extremely high level. They were getting 5-star recruits. They were legitimately contending for national championships. They made 2 natties in a 4-year window of time with an Elite 8 appearance in there as well. The last part of Gary's statement, this suggests that Few's compatriots think his window has passed. I'm not really going to push back on that because I do think that that is a suggestion that is being made here, that is possible that coaches are suggesting that. Again, if you asked 100 coaches to pick their top 5 coaches who might win a championship, Mark Few's name is going to be all over that list. I think a lot of people would have picked him very high on this list. He just wasn't picked at the very top. I am surprised that Tommy Lloyd was picked over Mark Few. I'm a little surprised that Grant McCasland was picked over Mark Few, although I think Texas Tech is a really good team this year and could honestly do it this season. Same with Nate Oates, same a little bit with Dusty May, although Dusty May made a Final Four run with Florida Atlantic. And I get it. There's a through line when you're looking at those, especially those coaches in that others receiving votes category. They're at super high resource institutions. Alabama, Arizona, Michigan, and Texas Tech, big power conference programs with tons and tons of money being allocated to their basketball program. And I think ultimately the reason that Mark Few is not getting votes in this is not about his coaching necessarily. It is about concern. I guess I don't know if these coaches have this concern, but they are sharing skepticism that Gonzaga will continue to be able to compete at a national championship level due to changes in the House settlement and NIL and various other things that are in their minds preventing Gonzaga from being able to compete at that high level. I'm not sure I share that sentiment. I think that Gonzaga's move to the Pac-12 is going to help them financially in a way that is maybe not as recognizable. Again, I'm not saying that the coaches know that I know more than the coaches in the college basketball space. I don't. And I think it is very worth acknowledging another key part of the Candid Coaches series that happened earlier, like a week or so ago when they did their previous article, where they asked coaches point blank, do you think your competitors will cheat or find ways to circumvent the basically cap system that exists in college basketball in terms of NIL? 89% of the coaches surveyed said yes. Basically every coach that was in this survey said, I believe that my competitors will find a way to get a competitive advantage by breaking the rules effectively in college basketball. I tend to believe that if 89% of a select group of coaches that is this big, 100 plus coaches, if 89% of them believe that, that means that they're planning to do it too. That they're finding ways to get around this money situation. So if you are a team like Gonzaga and you're going to have potentially 75% of your, let's say, $10 million that you get from the Pac-12 media deal, that's $7.5 million. That's probably more than SEC, Big 12, Big 10 schools are going to be allocated out of their $20 million cap. But through the NIL Go system, coaches are going to find ways to get money to their players. It may take a year or two, but it's going to happen. And these coaches are basically straight up admitting that we believe that these programs are going to find ways to get whatever amount of money that they want to get and that they're capable of getting their hands on. They're going to get it to their players. And programs that have more money, that have more donors, that have more resources are going to spend more money. And unless there's a change to the system that really, really stops them from being able to do that, either severe consequences for breaking the rules or known reported salary caps, which we're very far away from either of those things seemingly happening, then the indication is that the rich are going to continue to get richer. The Kentuckys and the Michigans and the Ohio States and the Arizonas and Alabamas and all of them are going to spend as much money as they can get their hands on to make their rosters better. Gonzaga is not going to necessarily have that advantage. That is the concern that I think that is being presented here. Again, these coaches may not be concerned for Gonzaga the way that we are concerned for Gonzaga, but they are potentially, by not including Mark Few on this list. And again, we don't want to read too far into what is one question on a survey of 100 coaches, but it does seem to point to there being a movement of, hey, we think that these programs that have a lot of money are going to continue to be able to buy talent in a way that other programs that maybe don't have those same resources are not able to do so. And it could, I mean, again, as Gary wrote in his article, this suggests Few's compatriots think the window has passed. Has Mark Few's window passed? I am not willing to say that. I do not believe that that is true. I do not believe that the last couple of years being not quite up to par. Again, 2 years ago, they were a 5 seed that made the Sweet 16. Last year, yes, was a down year unquestionably, but they were a possession away from making it back to the Sweet 16 for what would have been a 10th straight year. The idea that Gonzaga is no longer able to compete for a national championship is not a belief that I have. And I also don't think it's a belief that many of these coaches have. But it's fair to think that there are plenty of other coaches at higher resource institutions who might be better set up to win a national championship before Mark Few and the Zags. And at his age and his amount of time he's spent at the program, it is fair to wonder if that is going to happen for him at all in a Gonzaga while at Gonzaga. Well, we're talking recruiting. We're talking about some of that stuff. So we're going to continue to talk on that topic here. One of the most efficient high school scorers in the country is taking an official visit to Spokane in October. We're going to talk about why Gonzaga is a prime spot to land this 4-star wing coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anybody else. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. And Mazda brings that same intention to how they craft every make and model. You can feel that incredible Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to available Nappa leather upholstery. With all-wheel drive standard in every crossover SUV, you can drive with confidence through almost any season. Because with Mazda, everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like our players, Mazda sweats every detail. Because when you make every move count impossible, it becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. Folks, most people cannot name all of their financial accounts or even what they are worth, whether it's their 401ks, their properties, or their investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. And that's why there's Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or on your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. My wife and I spend a lot of time making sure that our finances are up to date and in good shape, and Monarch makes it so simple for us to review our finances together. We can both see our budgets, our goals, and spending activity in one single place. So don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com using code LOCKEDONCollege. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. Moving away from our conversation recapping the Candid Coaches article about the next first-time national champion head coach, to instead talk recruiting here, as we got an update on Luca Foster. Luca Foster is a 4-star recruit in the 2026 class, and he has set an official date for his visit to Gonzaga. We'd known that Luca Foster was planning to visit. He announced in late July that Gonzaga was one of his top 9 finalists. He had set an intention to visit Gonzaga. In fact, it had been rumored, and I had said on this show that he was visiting October 11th. It turns out we were off by a week, as a report came out from Travis Branham of 247 Sports, who spoke with Luca Foster and got a report that he will be on campus the following weekend, October 18th. October 18th is a Saturday. It sounds like Foster is going to be, not sounds like, it is confirmed that Foster will be on campus for Gonzaga's first exhibition game of the season, which is Sunday, October 19th at 2 p.m. Kind of a unique time for an exhibition game, mind you. That game will be against NAIA Northwest University, which is a small school in Kirkland, Washington. And Luca Foster will be in the house for that game. Luca Foster, again, 4-star recruit, 6'5" small forward, currently playing at Link Academy in Bronson, Missouri. It's a very prominent basketball factory high school. He is actually from Pennsylvania, Wayne, Pennsylvania, more specifically. And like we said, he listed Gonzaga in his top 9 back in late July, early August. That top 9 is as follows. Gonzaga, of course, along with Villanova, Oklahoma, Michigan, Georgetown, Ohio State, Virginia, Pitt, and Oregon. And at this time, Luca Foster has taken an official visit to every single school on that list, with the exception of Gonzaga, which is now scheduled for October 18th, as well as Pitt, which he has visited unofficially at least once, probably multiple times. He grew up in the area. Pitt has been recruiting him for a very long time, as they want to kind of keep him at home and keep him in-house. So while Pitt is not on the official visit list, I would not consider them out of the running. In fact, it's the contrary. I think they are a program to keep an eye on here for Luca Foster. But this is good news for Gonzaga. When a player has visited 7 schools officially and he still schedules a visit to your school, it means he has not made up his mind. That is obvious and clear, but it is important. The announcement that Luca Foster has set an official visit to Gonzaga came less than 24 hours, or around 24 hours, after he wrapped up his official visit at Virginia. If he was dead set on going to Virginia, like 100% or 95% or whatever, he's probably not setting a date to visit Gonzaga. Does that mean Gonzaga is going to land Luca Foster? No, not necessarily. I don't know that they're a super strong candidate. On3, which they have their kind of prediction module, does not have Gonzaga as a super high candidate, but he hasn't been on campus yet. He hasn't arrived. He hasn't spoken about Gonzaga all that much, so I wouldn't read too much into that. Typically, it is advantageous to be the last place a player visits before they make their announcement. It doesn't always mean you're going to land them, but certainly, again, we'll use like Hurley Brutus as an example. Gonzaga was hopeful if he came to campus for craziness in the kennel that he would commit, but he chose to commit to LSU before arriving at Gonzaga. If a player leaves and does not commit to your school, you always fear that they're going to go somewhere else and be enamored by the new place. I mean, we're talking about 17-year-olds, 16, 17-year-olds. They're kids. And they can get drawn in by a new coach and a new recruiting pitch. If you're good at your job as a recruiter, you should be able to sell a player on your program when they come out to visit. You're never going to bat 1,000. No program has ever batted 1,000 on these recruiting pitches. But for Gonzaga, the chance to have their school and their program and Spokane and everything that they stand for the freshest on Luca Foster's mind when he's making his decision is an unequivocal advantage for this program. Foster is the 40th ranked player in the 2026 class, according to 247 Sports. Both On3 and ESPN have him 37th in their class rankings, so he is a pretty consensus right around that top 40 range in that class. And he's a really, really good scorer. On the EYBL summer circuit this last year, he shot over 37% from 3 on nearly 5 attempts per game. He averaged 16 points. He was a 60% shooter on 2-pointers, strong free throw shooter. This kid is an efficient scoring machine. That is what Mark Few and Gonzaga want. He also demonstrated some bounce, some athleticism that he didn't have like early in his high school career. Part of the reason he shot up the rankings for most of these recruiting sites. And he is a wrecking ball out in transition. He loves to score in transition. He's efficient around the rim, and he is a lights out, knockdown three-point shooter. It is not a surprise why Mark Few and Gonzaga is interested in Luca Foster, and it's not a surprise why Luca Foster would be interested in coming to Gonzaga, where things like getting out in transition and taking a bunch of shots and scoring at a high rate are highly, highly valuable. Any player who is an offensive player who likes to score, who wants to score in transition early and often, should be giving Gonzaga a serious look. Virginia is a bad example because they have a new coach, and their new coach, Ryan Odom, likes to get out and score. But I wouldn't consider Virginia's previous school, Tony Bennett, when he was their head coach, is not the kind of program you would want to go to. We'll see what Villanova looks like under Kevin Willard. They don't play a super fast pace, so I'm interested in that potential school for them as well. But most of the schools on this list tend to get out and run, tend to get out and score a lot of points. So it's not surprising to see Gonzaga be in the mix for a player like Luca Foster. Some other recruiting tidbits here before we get into our final segment on the show. Of course, Gonzaga does have one commitment in the 2026 class. That's Jack Cahill, a 6'5" guard from Germany who is set to join Gonzaga next year, assuming he does not stay or join the 2026 NBA draft, which he is still keeping his options open. Gonzaga was hoping to get a commitment from Sam Funches, a 7-foot center who visited for Craziness in the Kennel, was inundated by the Kennel faithful with a big old "We Want Funches" chant early in the exhibition game. He spoke about that with Cole Forsman of Gonzaga on SI afterwards, talked about how great it was. He doesn't like all that spotlight and attention, but he said it was fun to hear it from the Gonzaga faithful, and said Gonzaga is kind of a perfect fit for him. Now he is planning to take another visit, which, as we mentioned, is not ideal. You would have liked to get a commitment before he takes his final visit, especially since that final visit is scheduled to be at LSU. It'd be a real bummer to lose 2 players to LSU in this recruiting cycle, but all things kind of point to Sam Funches really liking what he saw from his visit in Spokane and liking what the coaching staff is selling and liking the opportunity to play in a system that is so valuable to bigs the way that this program is. So we'll see what ends up happening with Funches. It sounds like it might be a couple of weeks before he makes a decision. Hopefully Gonzaga stays fresh in his mind. Gonzaga also is set to have Anthony Felici, a 4-star guard with good defensive instincts, on campus November 3rd for their season opener against Texas Southern. And they're also going to have Cameron Holmes, a 4-star forward, 6'7" forward, on campus November 8th for their game against Oklahoma at the Spokane Arena. Cameron Holmes recently spoke with Eric Bossi of 247 Sports about his recruitment. He was asked about each program that is on his list, including Gonzaga, and he said, quote, "Gonzaga is a great place. Coach Few has been doing a great job up there for a long time. This decision is going to be so hard because I've got a lot of great schools I'm considering, and Gonzaga is another great one." Wouldn't read too much into the quote, especially since he hasn't been on campus yet, but certainly a player Gonzaga would love to get. He was a 5-star, has kind of dipped into the high 4-star territory at this point, but a super, super athletic left-handed wing that would be a great addition for the Zags in Spokane. Well, folks, we're going to move on, close out the show. France has produced some of the very best players in Gonzaga basketball history. We're going to rank the 5 Frenchmen to suit up for Mark Few to close out the show, coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, every day we make decisions. However, on PrizePicks, being right, it can actually get you paid. Don't miss the excitement of this football season with PrizePicks, where it's good to be right. Playing PrizePicks is such a fun and simple way to add more excitement to football. You just pick more or less on player projections, like Josh Allen's passing yards or Saquon Barkley rushing for a touchdown, and you're in the game. PrizePicks also just added stats, a pretty neat feature. If I want to ride with the player, I can select their passing yards, their rushing yards, and touchdowns all in one lineup. And the new injury reboot feature, if your player leaves early and doesn't return, it will not count against you. So download the PrizePicks apps today and use code LOCKEDONCollege, and you'll get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONCollege for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks. It's good to be right. All right, folks, closing out the show, talking about the best Gonzaga players in the Mark Few era from the country of France. If you have been listening to the show throughout the offseason, first of all, I appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you for being an everyday listener. It is fantastic. This has been a series we've been doing for a couple of months now. I think we started it in August, and we're going to kind of wrap it up here as we're getting into the actual start of the season and the player previews and all that good stuff coming up here in the next couple of weeks. But we've talked about the best Gonzaga players from the state of Oregon, from Colorado, from Minnesota, Idaho, Illinois, California, Texas, Nevada, and Virginia. And we also talked recently, last week, about the best players in the Mark Few era from the country of Canada. And today we're talking France. I will admit, my original plan for the show was to talk Germany because I was going to mention Jack Cahill, of course, the commit for Gonzaga in the 2026 class, who is from Germany. But part of my rule is that there have to have at least been 3 players from that state or country in order to talk about them. And there's only actually ever been 2 Germans to play for Gonzaga. That would be Elias Harris and Matisse Merninghoff. And I figured maybe we'll wait a year. Maybe we'll do Germany next year or 2 years from now, depending how long Jack Cahill stays in a Gonzaga uniform. But decided to pivot and instead talk about France because there are 5 players from the Mark Few era at Gonzaga who are from France. And I figured this would be a fun final segment for the show to talk about 3 of these players who are truly, truly excellent players. And I didn't have any trouble at number 1, but I did have trouble deciding between 2 and 3 on this list. Again, been a solid recruiting outlet for Gonzaga throughout the Mark Few era. Without further ado, we're going to get straight into it. Number 1, again, no real mystery here. This was the obvious choice. One of the greatest international players in Gonzaga history and a catalyst for Gonzaga's successful international recruiting of the last 20 years. That would be Ronny Turiaf from Martinique. Ronny Turiaf began at Gonzaga in 2001, was there until 2005, played in 127 games, started 73 of them, played about 25 and a half minutes per game. Finished his Gonzaga career averaging 13.5 points, 7 boards, and 1.5 blocks. However, after a freshman year where he averaged about 7 points per game, in his sophomore, junior, and senior seasons, he averaged between 15 and 16 points per game all 3 years. Incredible consistency for Ronny. Again, one of the first true, really great players in the Mark Few era for Gonzaga. He was the 2005 WCC Player of the Year. He was a 3-time All-WCC selection. He was the 2004 WCC Tournament MVP. That is going to be a theme on this show, is that winning the WCC tournament MVP, by the way. He was also on the 2004 All-WCC tournament team, as you'd expect. Ronny is the program leader in free throws made and free throws attempted. He was elite at drawing contact and getting to the charity stripe. He's also 3rd in Gonzaga history in blocks, 6th in rebounds, and 8th all-time in points scored. He's also the WCC's all-time leader in free throw attempts and 2nd in made free throws. Ronny was drafted 37th overall in the 2005 NBA draft, had a 10-plus year NBA career, and that is after missing a full year after having heart surgery early in his NBA career. He was a journeyman. He was a great player. He played with LeBron James. He played with Kobe Bryant, a phenomenal player, an ambassador for the country of France at the professional basketball level, and one of the greatest international Zags of all time. One of the greatest Zags of all time, period, but certainly when considering the international factor. Number 2, this is, again, tough call between number 2 and number 3. They were teammates for a couple of years, but I went with Killian Tillie at number 2. Killian Tillie from Paris, France, played at Gonzaga from 2016 to 2020, 108 games in a Gonzaga uniform, started 59 of them, averaged 9.5 points, 4.5 boards, 1.5 assists, shot 44% from 3 for his career. In fact, was over 40% from 3 all 4 years he spent in a Gonzaga uniform. Killian Tillie was a 2-time All-WCC member. He was first team in 2020 and second team back in 2018. He was also the 2018 WCC Tournament MVP. Again, mentioned that was a theme, and was on the All-Tournament team. He also led the WCC with an effective field goal percentage of 65.2 back in that 2018 season. A couple other notes on Killian Tillie. He had a pair of free throws to give the Zags a 4-point lead with about a second left in the 2017 Final Four, a win over South Carolina. He was a true freshman. Who came in the game and hit 2 free throws to give Gonzaga a 2-possession lead. He basically iced the game for Gonzaga in the Final Four as a freshman. It is well worth acknowledging how ridiculous that is for Killian Tillie. What a way to make a name for himself early in his Gonzaga basketball career. Also, the most notable Killian Tillie fact, by far, in the 2018 WCC tournament, where he was, as we mentioned previously, the tournament MVP. It is because Killian Tillie took 14 threes across 3 games in Las Vegas, and he made 13 of them. He shot 93% from the three-point line in 3 games while attempting nearly 5 threes per game. It was the most absurdly ridiculous heater that I have ever seen a Gonzaga player on in my life, by far. Unbelievable what Killian Tillie did in Las Vegas in 2018. So much so that 1 year into dating my now wife, we went to that event. We went to that tournament. She was not a Gonzaga fan previously, and she was enamored, starstruck by Killian Tillie, seemingly never missing a three-point shot. And it is part of the reason, if not the entirety of the reason, that our lovely 6-year-old dog is named Tillie. Had to throw that fact in there because it is a part of our family history. And I will admit, part of the reason I gave Tillie the nod over who we have at number 3, but I believe that Killian Tillie belongs here. Yes, he dealt with injury issues, and it was unfortunate that it hampered his career. He only played 15 games in his junior year. He only played 24 games in his senior year, but he shot over 40% from 3 all 4 years, like we mentioned. His career 60% on two-pointers, career 75% from the free throw line. His effective field goal percentage for his career at Gonzaga is 62.5%. That is the same as Drew Timme, who is Gonzaga's franchise leader. The only reason Killian Tillie is not tied with Drew Timme is because there is a minimum number of attempts you have to have had to show up on Basketball Reference's leaderboard, and Killian Tillie didn't quite get there. But he has the same effective field goal percentage as the greatest scorer in Gonzaga basketball history in Drew Timme. Love Killian Tillie, love to give him some recognition here. Number 3, again, tough call between these two former teammates, both from Paris, France. Number 3 for me is Joel Ayayi. He spent 3 years at Gonzaga from 2018 to 2021. He did redshirt the 2017-18 season as well. Played 88 games in a Gonzaga uniform, started 54 of them, averaged about 9 points, 5 boards, 2.3 assists, and 1 steal per game. Very efficient score, 64% on two-pointers, 36% from 3 for his career. He was 2020-21 All-WCC first teamer. He was, as I mentioned, it was a theme, the 2020 WCC tournament MVP. So all 3 of these guys won a WCC tournament MVP in their career. He also has the only triple-double in Mark Few history. In the history of Mark Few being the head coach for Gonzaga, 1 player has recorded a triple-double, and it was Joel Ayayi on January 9th, 2021 against the University of Portland Pilots. 12 points, 14 assists, and 13 rebounds for Joel. And I just want to highlight his 2020-21 season in particular, because that year, the headlines went to Jalen Suggs. The headlines went to All-American Corey Kispert. The headlines went to Drew Timme, who blossomed into a dominant force as a sophomore. But Joel Ayayi was great. Dare I say elite this season as a connector, as a do-it-all, versatile guard for this Gonzaga team. He's the reason that you could switch your starting lineup from having Anton Watson to having Andrew Nembhard and not miss a beat, because Joel could play so many different roles. In that 2020-21 season, Joel averaged 12 points, 7 rebounds, and 2.7 assists per game. He shot 68% on two-pointers. 68% on two-pointers. Drew Timme didn't always do that. Anton Watson didn't always do that. 68% on twos for his 6'5" guard is absurd. He also shot 39% from 3, 78% from the free throw line. His 66.5% true shooting percentage that year is the 10th highest single season mark in Gonzaga basketball history. He's one of the greatest guards in Gonzaga history, one of the greatest, arguably the greatest rebounding guard in Gonzaga history, and certainly the greatest French guard in Gonzaga basketball history, a tremendous player who deserves so much shout outs here for his career in Spokane. 2 more guys to talk about here. Number 4 on the list, Matisse Kaita. He is from Roubaix, France. He spent 2 years at Gonzaga from 2010 to 2012. Played 39 games, started 4 of them, averaged about 7 minutes, 2 points, 1 rebound per game. Was much better as a freshman than a sophomore. His freshman year, he averaged about 3 points, 1.5 boards, and close to 10 minutes per game. As a sophomore, he only averaged 4 minutes per game and less than 1 point. He had some nice performances, 12 points, 2 steals, 2 rebounds on 5 of 7 shooting against Wake Forest in January of 2011. He also had 9 points, 2 assists on 4 of 5 shooting at Santa Clara that same month. He has also played professionally in France for over a decade now since leaving Gonzaga. Very cool to see him continuing to play professionally. I mean, he averaged 6 points and 3 assists last year in France. Very cool to see him continuing his professional career. Never really found his spot at Gonzaga, but still a quality role player for a couple of seasons in Spokane. And last up here is Mamari Diallo from Normandy. Spent 1 season at Gonzaga after spending 2 years at Midland Junior College in Texas. He was at Gonzaga for just 8 games in that 05-06 season. Only played 29 total minutes, had 6 points, 4 boards, and a block on 2 of 8 shooting. Still gets a nod here as being the 5th Frenchmen who have played, the second Frenchman to have actually played at Gonzaga, the 5th total now as we enter the 2025-26 season. Folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much for making the show your first listen and your first watch of the day. We'll be back later in the week. We got more of our player preview series coming your way, more updates on recruiting and all that stuff coming here soon. Thanks again for listening, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Zags.